So tell me, can you imagine finding yourself like John in the very throne room of God, where you're standing there, there's the Lord, there's the four living creatures, maybe you've just been raptured, and you are there before the Lord, humbly. What are you going to do? Like the song says, do you fall on your knees before Him? Do you raise your hands and pray and praise Him? Do you do both, or are you just quiet? What do you do? John finds himself here in the very throne room of God, and this is what he sees. So in Revelation chapter 4, we have the four living creatures described, and we're going to talk about that. As I promised you last time, John is not the only one to have found himself, as other prophets, before the very throne room of God, before the very throne of God, in the throne room of God, in the midst of the throne and around the throne. Revelation chapter 4 says that this is where the four living creatures were. They were in the midst of the throne and around the throne. What does that look like? Let's take a look at this. After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." And we talked about after this in the last couple of videos. Verse 2, "At once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, with one seated on the throne. And he who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder, and before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the sevenfold Spirit of God. And before the thrones there was, as it were, a sea of glass, like crystal. And around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind." Verse 7, "The first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the four living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around and within, and day and night they never cease to say, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come.' And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to Him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before Him who is seated on the throne and worship Him who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before Him, saying, 'Worthy are you, O Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things. And by your will they existed and were created.'" Wow. What a scene. So this is interesting that we see them around the throne, a unique and exalted type of an angelic order, just called living breeds or beings, and they're kind of like a hybrid type of a description of what we read in the Old Testament from the prophets. So they're kind of a hybrid of a cherubim that we see in Ezekiel, but then also seraphim in Isaiah. So they're covered with eyes front and back. Who can imagine that? Hardly. It's difficult to imagine what he's seeing. 6 wings. They appear as a lion, ox, man, and eagle. And they lead worship. And they're leading all to worship him. And these are the ones that summon the first 4 seals in Revelation chapter 6 when we get there. So they participate in judgment also. So the 6 seals are part of judgment of God. It starts that way, and then by the time we get to Revelation 15:7, we see them again. It doesn't go into the details of what they look like, but it mentions these same ones before. So this is interesting. the living creatures, they're not always described the same way in every Revelation passage or in every passage of the Bible. But in Revelation 4 or 5, it gives us a full description, or right here it does. And then later chapters refer back to them, not repeating the details. So where else are they? If you jot some notes, write this down. You'll see them in Revelation 6, and it just refers back with the same with chapters 5, 6, and 7. It just mentions them, that they're there. But we see them in Revelation 14, 15, and 19. And I'll try to put an image up here, and this is an AI depiction, kind of an image that had to be coaxed into, no, it needs 6 wings, not just 2. No, that it needs to be, but still they kind of take some liberties and do some weird things. But I'll put an image or two up here. And it's so difficult to imagine that you try to get as detailed as you can, and still things get weird. And then sometimes you try to coax an AI, and sometimes AI is bad with hands, and it'll do 6 fingers or 2 thumbs and 4 fingers, or who not, it doesn't. So it does the same kinds of things with wings. And then imagine trying to tell an AI, like in the Old Testament, no, those four faces all the way around. And AI, you'd think that AI would say, oh, that's my kind of art, because I mess that up all the time. But you try to get it to get the descriptions right, and not so much. But the key insight most people miss, Revelation's living creatures are kind of a hybrid, as I mentioned before, of what we see of the cherubim in Ezekiel, 4 faces full of eyes, and also the seraphim, though, with 6 wings and all saying, holy, holy, holy. So we see this kind of a language a lot. So the living creatures, and there's also angels around the throne. So John sees the same category of beings Isaiah and Ezekiel saw, but from a different angle and in a different moment. So we'll get there, but one sees them kind of from above, and the other one sees them from beneath the throne. So the throne is evidently elevated, and it's not just straight ahead like you see in the movies where you have a king's throne and people walk up and there's a little bit of a platform or riser there, and they walk up to it. No, the Lord in this is elevated. So in Isaiah, the seraphim in Isaiah 6, verses 1 to 7, describes them. And seraphim means the burning one, so they must really glow brightly. I can read this to you real quick. Concerning the seraphim, Isaiah 6 describes them this way. It says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high, and lifted up. And his train, the long train on his robe, it filled the temple. So his throne is, the place where the throne room is, it actually is a temple, or more accurately, probably the temple that we are used to having described and seeing on earth is made to resemble what God's got in heaven. We are the type, we are the shadow. He's the real solid deal. So everything that we have down here on earth is a type of him. It's not the other way around. He's not like us, and his throne room is not like the temple. The temple's like his throne room. So this image that I have here and other images we see, we don't usually see the train of his robe throughout, filling up the whole temple. So that's verse 1. So above him, now notice, higher stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory. So it's like they're singing to each other and going, are you checking this out? And they're singing, wow, isn't this guy awesome? Isn't God awesome? And that's what they're singing. As one says it to the other, and they're flying. So they're hovering around and singing, and they're happy, and they're praising the Lord. What an awesome sight that must be. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips. You've got to be feeling like that. What am I even doing here? I'm going to be consumed in fire. This is a holy place. And so Isaiah's got to be full of wonder. Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. Wow, what a depiction that is. So to get into all the symbolism of what's going on there and the description, it'd be really easy to run down that path. And a good Bible study in Isaiah is probably called for. But for right now, what we want to do is we want to try to get a picture of what John is seeing in Revelation, so we can know from this too in Isaiah what we're expected to see. And we're going to be as overwhelmed. We just are. And it'll be amazing. And I can't wait. So Isaiah uses the term seraphim. So they're the burning ones. Everything else, there's purification going on, there's worship going on. They're not described with multiple faces, neither are they in Revelation. They're not covered in eyes, and they're not throne bearers. So Revelation's living creatures, they share 6 wings, and the holy, holy, holy liturgy is showing an overlap between seraphim and the living creatures. Now, let's look at the other. Let's look at Ezekiel. Now, this is in Ezekiel chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 10. Let's get there. Ezekiel chapter 1. Let's begin in verse 4. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud and brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. But each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings, not 6 wings. Different. So these living creatures are different. They don't have 6 wings, and they don't have an individual face that's like 4 of these things. Instead, they each have 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot. So they have hoofs, in other words. And they sparkled like burnished bronze. Wow. Like glittery gold, right? Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands. So they got the wings, and then they got hands in addition to their wings. So it's not like, a bat and some birds, their wings kind of act as their arms, so that they flap their wings, and their wings are their arms. No. They have got arms separate from the wings. Their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. So as they go, these angels, their wings are going forward and they're touching. And if they move around, and they don't turn around and head in the direction they're going. They're always facing forward from Ezekiel's perspective, what he's seeing. So, and then in verse 10, as for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. It must be less shocking to look at if you look and you see a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, their right side, or the side he's looking at. I don't know. So the face of a lion on the right side, the face had the face of an ox on the left, and they had the face of an eagle. And how we knew that with the reflections or whatever, because they didn't turn around. Maybe they got enough off to the side that he could look and see the back of their head and see that looks like a big eagle's bill there. So it looks like an eagle on the back. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out above. So they had wings in front, and they also had wings above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies. So 2 in the front, touching like this, and then 2 on top. Kind of hard to picture, isn't it? And each went straight forward each of the spirits, the living creatures went forward, perhaps not their wings. So because it talks about them as they went. Each went straight forward. Wherever the spirit would go, they went without turning as they went. So under the spirit's direction, they moved in the spirit. And we should be moved in the spirit too. We're not as holy and we don't get it as perfectly, but however the spirit moves, they go. and how Ezekiel was able to figure that out and understand what exactly was going on and what he knew the indicators were. Who knows? But I imagine someday, very soon, we're going to find out. As for the likeness of the creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro. So it came across as like a holy and righteous kind of a heat. And there might have been a little bit of a shimmer in addition to the glow. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. And the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now, verse 15, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the four of them. As for the appearance of the wheels, their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, and the four had like the same likenesses, their appearance and construction being, as it were, a wheel within a wheel. So almost like a gyroscope type of situation, probably some for moving forward and sideways. The mechanics of that are different, than there's different theories about what that looks like. Verse 15, when they went in any of their four directions without turning as they went. And their rims were tall and awesome. And the rims of all four were full of eyes all around. So the rims, not the angels were all full of eyes, but the rims on the wheels, this chariot type of mechanism thing. When the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went. And the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So they were like kind of inside the wheels, and the wheels were beside them. So they were kind of surrounded by the wheels. So they're charioteers. These angels acted at these particular creatures with the four faces were charioteers, and the throne acted as like the chariot. So they drove the Spirit, and I imagine the Spirit, wherever the Spirit led, he's talking about the Spirit of the Lord, the Holy One on the throne. So wherever the Lord wanted them, that's where they moved, and they moved kind of wherever. And so this is underneath the throne, different from John's perspective, where it seemed like he was just looking off at a distance. This is what's going on underneath. So we got Isaiah looking from above, and then we got this. This is our view of what's going on underneath the throne. Verse 21, when those went, these went. When those stood, these stood. And when those rose from the earth, the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Over the heads of the living creatures was the likeness of an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal, spread out above their heads. Now it's like a sea of glass kind of a thing. So it's like, I don't know, a force field, like a sea of glass that shimmers a little bit like water, maybe, but so it's some type of an expanse, a space, a riser, maybe, that the throne sat on the riser. So this bit is resting on top of the chariot wheels that the angels, the living creatures, were driving and moving around. Verse 23, under the expanse, their wings were stretched out straight, one toward another. I guess they mean each other, not their own wings, one toward another, but toward each creature. And each creature had two wings covering its body. And when they went, I heard the sound of their wings like the sound of many waters. So it's loud. Maybe not even a V8, maybe a V12. I don't know, like the sound of the Almighty. Remember, the Almighty, often when he speaks, it's like a sound of a waterfall, rushing winds, peals of thunder, like a trumpet. So really loud, like a tumult, a huge cacophony, like the sound of many waters, like the sound of the Almighty, a sound of a tumult, like the sound of an army. When they stood still, they let down their wings. And there came a voice from above the expanse over their heads, now from the throne, above that clear expanse, the sea of glass or whatever. And when they stood still, they let down their wings. And above the expanse on their head, there was a likeness of a throne, in appearance like a sapphire. And seated above the likeness of a throne was a likeness with a human appearance. So here we're talking about the same thing John saw. You've got Messiah, Jesus Christ, Yahweh, sitting on his throne. Verse 27, and upward from what had appeared had the appearance of his waist, as it were the gleaming of metal, like the appearance of fire enclosed around and forward. From that, we had what the appearance of his waist I saw was the appearance of fire. So brightness shining forth like fire. And there was brightness all around him, like the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud of the day in the rain, because the sun's got to be out before you see the rainbow. So the midst of his glory and the shining and all from him was like the sun, so it made this rainbow type of appearance all around him. So was the appearance all brightness all around, not just a bow, but it was a glowing, bursting forth, the a multispectral kind of a glow coming from him, not just white, which is interesting. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard the voice of one speaking. And the rest of that's another story. But let's look at Ezekiel 10. Ezekiel 10, then I looked and behold on the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim. Remember, there's an expanse in between. Then you got the throne and the Lord sitting on the throne. And these are cherubim, described with the four faces, cherubim. Now remember, Satan, when he started off, he was a cherubim. Not the cute little plushy things with the squishy cheeks that you see on greeting cards, right? Not at all. In fact, 8 cheeks, because you got that 4 times. And I don't know what kind of cheeks eagles have, but not at all like what we see on greeting cards. So above them appeared something like sapphire, an appearance like a throne. And he said to the man clothed in linen, "Go in among the whirling wheels beneath the cherubim, fill your hands with burning coals from between the cherubim and scatter them over the city." So this is judgment he's calling on. So comes in and scoops up a bunch. So he went in before my eyes. Now the cherubim were standing on the south side of the house, the Lord's house, when the man went in, and a cloud filled the inner court. And the glory of the Lord went up from the cherub to the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of the Lord. And the sound of the wings of the cherubim was heard as far as the outer court, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. And when he commanded the man clothed in linen, take fire from between the whirling wheels, from between the cherubim, he went in and stood beside a wheel, and the cherub stretched out his hand from between the cherubim to the fire that was between the cherubim. So he reached in and he took some of it and he put it into the hands of the man clothed in linen, and who took it out, and the cherubim appeared to have the form of a human hand under their wings. So when he reached out, it describes his hand and it looks like a human hand. And I looked, and behold, there were 4 wheels beside the cherubim, one on each side of each cherub, and the appearance of the wheels was like sparkling beryl. And as for the appearance, the 4 had the same likeness as if a wheel were within a wheel. Same description here in verse 10. In verse 11, when they went in any of the 4 directions without turning as they went. They just went this way or that way, and they didn't turn in that direction. They just rolled. But in whatever direction the front wheel faced, the others followed without turning as they went, and their whole body, their rims and their spokes and their wings and the wheels full of eyes all around, and the wheels that the 4 of them had. As for the wheels, they were called in my hearing the whirling wheels. So somebody said something about the whirling wheels. Maybe it was another angel praising, looking at the Lord, looking at the whirling wheels, and he mentioned it. And so Ezekiel here heard it. So he says, "Oh, the whirling wheels." Well, that makes sense. Verse 14, and every one had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub, and the second face was a human face, and the third face was a lion, and the fourth face was an eagle. So the ox face isn't there. So their faces change. Sometimes, maybe this explains some of the things. Then they can do whatever they change into whatever face and form they want. And the faces have representation, of strength and majesty and human intelligence. Or is it the eagle intelligence? Probably the human intelligence is more like an ox, right? Because we can be pretty thick-headed. But people try to figure out what the meaning is. And there are ways oxes and eagles and things are described in Proverbs and in the Psalms. And those are worth studying and looking through to try to figure out exactly what the Lord is trying to depict in the character and in what the four living creatures are doing and what their nature is like, what their character is like. Verse 15, and the cherub mounted up. These were the living creatures that I saw by the Chebar Canal. And when the cherubim went, the wheels went beside them. And when the cherubim lifted up their wings to mount up from the earth, the wheels did not turn from beside him. When they stood still, they stood still. And when they mounted up, these moved up with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in them. The spirit, I'm sure, being the Lord. Then the glory of the Lord, verse 18, went up from the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim, and the cherubim lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth before my eyes as they went out, and the wheels beside them, and they stood at the entrance of the east gate of the house of the Lord, and the glory of the Lord of Israel was over them. Verse 20, these were the living creatures that I saw underneath the throne of Israel by the Chebar Canal, and I knew that they were cherubim. Each had four faces, each had four wings, and underneath their wings the likeness of human hands. Verse 22, and as for the likeness of their faces, they were the same faces whose appearance I had seen by the Chebar Canal. Each one of them went straight forward. So he's just trying as best he can to recount this vision that he saw. Now this is as if the throne room came down and the throne of heaven, the Lord came down to them and in chariots. So the Lord came down to do something, to accomplish something here in the story of what happens here in Ezekiel. And it's for you to go in there and study and read that in Ezekiel chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 10 is what we just read. So four faces, four wings, man, lion, ox, eagle, but also the face at one time was like the face of a cherub and not the face of an ox. So they can change a little bit or something for some reason, for whatever God's purposes are. And they move as the Spirit of the Lord commands them to move. They're identified as cherubim. They're not identified as just living creatures. So it's a little bit differently. They are throne bearers, charioteers. They drive it. I'll try to put in more graphics as I see them and as I find them. Some are better than others, and some are modern sci-fi, AI, weird things that are like kind of overreaching there. So the interlocking wheels are Ophanim. The text in Ezekiel 1:16 describes their appearance as a wheel intersecting a wheel, or almost like a gyroscope, or notes they could move in whatever direction they wanted to. So we've got an image, and we can put this image on here, and you can see overlapping right angles. So unlike a gyroscope where you got a wheel within a wheel, and they don't overlap or whatever necessarily. One is smaller than the other in a gyroscope. This is a little bit different. And the rims are covered in eyes. So it says the rims were high and awesome, and all four rims were full of eyes all around. So that's kind of like not like the giant weird sci-fi picture that we see sometimes where it's got like a giant eyeball in the middle of them. And that I've seen that image and saying, where does that one single giant eyeball on the inside? It's kind of weird sci-fi AI thing going on there. So they were all around the thrones, and these exact four different images are there, and they're charioteers. They're the chariot drivers. They drive the throne of God wherever he wants to go, wherever the Spirit of the Lord wants to go. They're the Spirit within the wheels. And then we got the crystal platform that's underneath that. So above the heads of the living creatures was what looked like an expanse, gleaming like awesome crystal, Ezekiel 1:22. High above that platform was the throne that looked like lapis lazuli or sapphire, and seated on it was a divine figure surrounded by a brilliant glow. In Daniel 7, there's an angelic throne, kind of a thing that's recounted where it talks about myriads of angels were around. So on the outside, further out, are just myriads, or in other words, thousands and thousands of angels Thousands upon thousands attended him, 10,000 times 10,000, so millions, stood before him, not individually described, but they're just clearly present in the throne room of God in Daniel 7. So they're ministering, they're attending the heavenly court, and they're witnessing judgment as well. As angels frequently are around to witness things that God does. So we see that this is consistent too with Revelation's innumerable angels in chapter 5 as we get there, 11, where we just see this massive crowd of angels or cloud of angels. With this, or the seven angels before God in Revelation 8:2, we see more there. The seven angels who stand before God. Not description in detail, but they're given seven trumpets, and these are judgments of judgment, as we know. In the seals, when those are broken, and the seals, the commandment of the four horsemen to go forth is by the four living creatures. In this, we've got seven angels with trumpets, and as they blow each trumpet, more judgments upon the earth. And then we got in the midst, mixed in with that and around that, is we got the 24 elders here in Revelation 4 and 5. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on him, God. So these aren't angels. These are glorified, earthbound, crowned humans, redeemed saints, included here because they're around the throne and interacting with the angelic beings. So you can kind of get a perspective of who's where, who's on first. The wheels, or the Ophanim, in Ezekiel 1 and 10, beside the cherubim, under the throne chariots, wheels full of eyes, they move around. The heavenly host, the attended angels, are all around. Angels involved in judgment. We see in Revelation 6, 7, 8, in Revelation 15, Revelation 16, and they appear around the throne. Some fly over the earth at the command of the Lord, and they make proclamations of the Lord and proclaim the gospel as they circle the earth. So we see these angelic beings doing the work of the Lord. And the living creatures around the throne, I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that we can get into. I will put on here, I'm going to make these notes available as a PDF. If you look below, there should be a link. There should be a link, a files link to download. Maybe I'll also try to put a link in the description, and it'll go to a Google Drive, and it'll give you a link that you can click on. And as long as you've got the link, or you give anybody who's got the link should be able to click on that and download this Adobe Acrobat PDF file for you to look at. But in here on page 6, beginning on page 6, and it crosses over onto page 7, it's a table, and it will tell you the features, like the number seen, the location, the wings, faces, eyes, all that kind of stuff. And then it'll go across the top. There'll be Seraphim, Isaiah 6, Cherubim in Ezekiel, and then the living creatures in Revelation. So I hope you enjoy that and like that. And then there's kind of like a very text-based kind of a grid outline, so you can see who's where and what perspective and how far away, not far distance measurement-wise, but in perspective to one another. And also a vertical layout, because above the throne, you've got the Seraphim. They're proclaiming, holy, holy, holy. You've got 6 wings. And at the throne, God's on the throne. There's lightning and thunder and a rainbow. And then there's 7 lamps also. And around the throne, you got the 4 living creatures in Revelation 4 and 24 elders. And you got the outer court beyond that, which is just countless angels. Now, Ezekiel's view is more of a side view. So he's seeing above. There's an expanse like crystal. So he's looking up at the throne, and he's looking below, and he can see the workings of the chariot, which is run, the machine is, instead of a hamster wheel or a hamster cage, sorry, angels, not to be insulting, but instead of that type of a look, what you've got is living creatures are the machine, the mechanism that move things. It's not gears and things. It's living creatures that are moving the throne of God. It's just amazing. So it's a throne and chariot type of emotion. Isaiah's view again is he's looking upward, and he's focusing on holiness and the purification. John is looking, it seems to be a centered perspective, looking at the throne, the living creatures, the elders, and the angels. So I hope you enjoy this. Praise the Lord. We've got a lot to look forward to. This is so much to take in. Clearly, our experience on earth is we are like men and women isolated on an island somewhere, and we've never seen, airplanes and ships, and we've never seen lions and elephants, and we've never seen alligators or whatever, and we're just kind of, like native creatures on a small little island, and experience things and language and music and things that we've never experienced before. And this is that, actually, times 10 or more. I don't know. It's going to be an experience that we're just going to have difficulty comprehending, but I'm going to enjoy it. So next time we'll continue. We'll go into chapter 5 then and see what happens with the living creatures and what happens on the throne, what happens with the 24 elders. And so I hope you enjoyed this. I'm glad I'm finally back to be with you. I was away a little bit. I hope you had a blessed Memorial Day. Thankful to all of you veterans out there who serve and have served, and particularly for Memorial Day, those who've fallen. We want to always remember them. We have the freedoms that we have, the freedoms that we enjoy, though they are fleeting and being taken away from us bit by bit. They gave their lives so that we could continue with the freedoms that we do have. And so the Lord gave his life for the eternal freedom that we have forever and ever with him. Be blessed.
PaDaddy.